Bring in Amisha Cross, Democratic strategist. And we also have another guest with us too, Rina Shah. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here today. All right, so we've been waiting all day for this speech to come to us from Moorehouse. We want to talk to you about what we just heard. Let's listen a little bit to the president, and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
Instead of a trail of broken promises, we're investing more money than ever in black families and black communities. We're reconnecting black neighborhoods cut off by old highways and decades of disinvestment when no one cared about the community. We've delivered checks in pockets to reduce black child poverty, the lowest rate in history.
Okay, so we're going to start with Amisha, our Democratic guest here. Based on what you just heard, what did you think of President Biden's address at Moorehouse?
Well, first, I want to congratulate all of the men of Moorehouse who became Moorehouse men today, those graduates. In addition to that, I thought that President Biden was pitch perfect. He talked about his story arc. He talked about the last words that his son, Beau Biden, had before he passed to him. But he also talked about the strength of Moorehouse, the strength of HBCUs, the strength of looking at those young people in that audience who will go on to possibly be a Supreme Court judge later. He talked about, somebody who may be vice president later. They currently already have a vice president who's an HBCU grad, but also gave a message of hope to these students and reminded them of all of the things that this president has done to improve the black community, whether it was technological advancement and providing for areas that previously did not have things like Wi-Fi, whether it was the expansion of healthcare and healthcare assistance for many people who did not have it before, the sizable student loan debt that he was able to grant towards people who the Republican side of the aisle tried to deny multiple times over and the Supreme Court shot down. He talked about a lot of the initiatives that he's done to rebuild the economy for black people, small business ownership, the importance of increased HBCU funding, specifically to make sure that the historic underfunding that they've had for generations is that gap is closed, but moreover, that they invest in science, technology, all of these things that allow for black grads from HBCUs to be able to go out into the world and be competitive in the workforce. He also really laid out the case for providing for our democracy and his support for not only a two-state solution, but calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
All right, Rina, that definitely covered a lot of ground, right? And Biden has spent the week reaching out heavily to black voters. So let's talk about what your thoughts are on either candidate being engaged enough with minority voters up to this point. This is a pivotal moment this weekend.
Well, President Biden went into today's speech with a tall order, knowing what the poll numbers have showed in recent weeks and months about black men slipping away from him, largely on the feeling of economy. Again, something that doesn't fully match up with the numbers this administration has touted. In black and white, this administration has delivered economically. But as we all know, the feeling of the economy not doing as well as it looks on paper is still pervasive. So the president, again, had to hit at some of these things. There are reports, though, of men in the audience, graduates sitting with their back turned to the president. One graduate, for example, had a Palestinian flag on his back the entirety of the time the president spoke. He understands whatever's happening abroad and whatever is happening domestically is all coming together in this moment, less than 6 months out from Election Day. How do you speak to that? And I think the president did it as best as he could. There were no cringeworthy moments for me. I think the contrast of us versus them was there. He, of course, couldn't do it as heavily as one could on a campaign speech, given this was a commencement speech. But I think, again, that contrast between him and Trump, what his administration has done for Black America in trying to advance Black Americans was really palpable today. Trump needs to now fight back on that, speaking directly not only to Black Americans, but to Asian Americans about that message of prosperity, innovation, competition that the Republican Party has had a long history of talking about. But what are the actions that Trump had during his administration? What does he plan to do now to do these things in order to counter what Biden said today?
All right, Amisha, I want to get your reaction to everything we just heard Rina say, because there's a lot to unpack there. What are your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, Joe Biden was talking to Black Georgians, but he also recognized that in his speech he was talking to Black people writ large. These Moorehouse graduates are among the best and the brightest this nation has, despite what we're hearing in terms of rhetoric from the Republican Party that has pushed anti-CRT, that calls anything that walks, talks, and is Black DEI, to diminish the strength of Black achievement. And we've heard time and time again them try to restrict access to high places for Black people, in addition to a lot of the negative commentary up to and including not even thinking of migrants as human. I think that we saw contextually not only that that policy changes that are very different between Joe Biden and former President Trump, but also the racial tensions that exist that former President Trump, has actually only solidified and expanded and continues to do on the campaign trail. I think that was a very strong message. He absolutely had to come through and talk about the economic gains because perception is reality. And unfortunately, there are several people who, quite frankly, do not know or are not acknowledging, I blame some of this on the media, are not acknowledging some of the gains that this president has had specifically for the Black community and those who are underserved across this country. And he really laid plain what those gains are.
All right, Rina, there's a lot going on this weekend. As we take a look ahead, Biden is heading to Michigan for an NAACP event. This is a state with a strong Arab American population, as many know, that is largely unhappy with his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. So let's talk about that for a second. How do you think he plans to appeal to the Arab voters ahead of the election? This is a really important moment for him as well.
More than important, it's truly pivotal in how he messages to this group that feels betrayed by the Biden administration. And these are Muslim Americans who have a very strong memory of what happened when Trump took office. And the first order was the Muslim ban. So look, this is thorny in many ways because every time religion is brought in, we know how it plays out. Everybody takes to their camp and it sort of says, well, look, he can't do it well for everyone. I believe that Biden is interested in being a president for everybody. He's told us that. He's tried to show us that. And Trump has told us that he won't be a president for everyone in direct language. That is frustrating on many levels for the moderate Republicans that want to get back to sort of this era of normalcy. You know, I tend to be one of those strategists who believe that this hyperpolarization that our elected officials, largely at the federal level, promulgate is not something that most of us average American want, certainly not Michiganders who have a strong tradition of sending moderate types of folks from both sides of the aisle to federal level. But the Republicans in the state have made it so tough for moderatism to sort of push forward and win the day. So I think the president is going to get a little bit partisan when he goes to Michigan this week. He's going to have to push back hard on a lot of the misinformation that's been put out there. Let's not forget the uncommitted campaign still remains strong with Gen Z and millennials. It is tough for the president. But again, he's going to have to speak directly to hearts and minds like I heard him do today. So I want to give him some credit for that because personal vignettes really won out today in that speech at the Moorehouse commencement. I wonder if he can translate that to a win in Michigan this week. I am not so sure because the betrayal runs so deep. This community doesn't want to show up this fall. They don't like Trump. They feel betrayed by Biden. Where do they go? And that leaves them on the sidelines. Very, very bad for American democracy.
All right, I've got to leave it there. But again, we are tracking the president through the weekend with all of his stops. Amisha Cross, Rina Shah, thank you both so much for your time this weekend. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.